Welcome to the short video basically covering the use of methods in Java. Again, this video is aimed at beginner programmers who have started off using Java and have come to a point where they need to use methods and obviously may know some of the motivations for using methods but just want to see it being applied. So basically, without further ado, I suppose one thing what you would need to do is obviously understand why we use methods, which will become more apparent as we look at this code here. But also too, one of the subtle points why you would need to use methods is that when you do build up classes outside of the use of the main, you will need to use methods to coordinate and to pass messages between each other. So obviously you do need to at least understand the fundamentals of writing methods and the different parts. So looking at the code, what we have here, we've got a simple class here called methods intro, and we can see we've got two integers, x plus and y. Okay, and on line 6 we add them, and on line 7 we subtract them. So if I run that again, okay, build it, clean and build, and it's just taking its time to build. And if I run that, we can see down here that we've bought 11 and we've 1 down here in the output. So basically, hypothetically, this is a very simple program. It only has 2 or 3 lines. But obviously, as your programs grow in size, there's a few things to be concerned with. Number one, obviously, is that if you have code that is repeated over and over again, and if it's doing the exact same thing, but obviously just using different numbers or so forth like that, you might be able to get away with using methods to actually have it in one distinct place, and as you need that functionality, just call on that method and it will run that functionality. Now obviously there's settings which you can put on that method, which we will look at in a few minutes time. On top of that, again too, as I said before, that as your program grows as well and as your applications grow, you might have a class here called, we've one class here, but you can see obviously that within a package that it could be built up with several classes, and obviously methods allow communication between those classes, and there obviously that entails a huge amount of other factors. But again, just what we're going to focus on today is just writing simple methods within one class. Okay, there's one important point here, is note where end of main is there and end of class. So what we're going to do at this point in time is this, that on line 6 and line 7 we've two lines of code, our system out that print x and y and x minus y. So what we're going to do now is state, hang on a second, my program is going to be 1000 lines. I'm going to need to add 2 numbers probably 50 or 60 times within that code, and it mightn't just be even addition, it might be a huge calculate or even a more complex calculation than just these 2 ones, and you might want that in a separate place. But I'm only going to do simple methods here for addition and subtraction. Okay, so in order to write a method, most people starting off will write a method in this manner: public static void, and I'm just going to give it a method name of add int a int b. Okay, now this is known as the method signature or method heading. Well, it's more method heading, but just to go through this at this point in time, all of these words are key. Okay, public static void. Right, I'll just go through each one. Okay, public basically covers the access, that who can actually see this method. Now, not necessarily who can see it, but also who can use it. Now, you should have come across the access levels at this point in time, that the 2 ones that you would be probably most familiar with is public and private. In other words, if it's public, any other class can see it, so long as it can address it properly. If it's private, only that class can see it, no other class. Okay, there are 2 other access levels, protected and default, which can be a bit trickier for the beginner programmer. But for now, I'm going to leave my methods as being public. Now, it doesn't make much difference in this actual context because we're still dealing within one class, so the access level doesn't matter within here. The second keyword, static. Now, at this point in time, if you're a beginner programmer and you haven't built distinct classes to do to cover for objects and so forth like that, all your methods will be marked static. Now, when do they be marked non-static? That is when you're talking about instance code. In other words, that code that deals with an object, an instantiated object. Now, we haven't come to that point in time, so for now, all your methods will have static. The next keyword, void. Now, in this case, what it basically means is that this method will return nothing to the actual program itself. It can be called, and in this case, that I'm going to put in two numbers, one A and one B, and do whatever I want in the numbers, but nothing is going to be returned back to the actual program itself. So I'll just get rid of these two lines here, and I'm going to write in here the actual logic. Now, what these two here are basically, int A and int B, are two integers. Now, you can put anything into a method, or you don't need to put anything in there at all. But basically in this method, now what we're going to do is we're going to feed in two integers, one called A and one called B. We're going to add them in this case, and then we're just going to show it out on the screen. So what I could do here, int C is equal to A plus B. Okay, and then C. Okay, so on line 12, I've declared int C, and that is equal to A plus B. So whatever A and whatever B are, they'll be added together, they'll be assigned to C, and then on line 13, I'm just printing out what the value of C. So that is my method at the moment. Now, obviously, as I said before, it's always good to keep on building stuff and so forth like that. What was I going to say as we go along? Now, I'll build that and I'll run it. Whoa, nothing has appeared. Oh my God, my program does not work. Hang on, didn't I have that method there on line 11, adding it, and I wanted to print out C. But the point being is that while we have the method there, we haven't actually called, or the technical term, invoked that method from anywhere else. So obviously it's there, it's possible to use it, but in this case we haven't. So in order to invoke the method called add, what you simply do in this case, now we're going to use, obviously I'm assuming that we're using X and Y. So on line 6 there, it's known as invoking the method. On line 6, I am going to invoke add method. Okay, that will invoke the add method. Okay, so in other words, we're calling it. We're calling the method called add, and we're feeding in two parameters, X and Y. X's value is 6, Y's value is 5. Okay, so if I build that again, clean and build, and just run that again, and you can see I'll just run that again, and it's 11. So I'll just even change some of the values just to even show that. X is 16, Y is 5. Run that again, and we get a value of 21. So what actually happens here is X's value is 16, Y's value is 5. They are placed in the method invocation at line 6. They go down here to line 11. Then they go into line 12, and obviously they do whatever they want in line 12. Okay, and 13. Now, just to show that obviously that there's communication and so forth like that, I'll just actually change this, and I'll actually just put in A plus B, and just to show that it's actually working, multiplied by 2. I'm just doing here now, obviously in the general context it's not adding, it's adding the two numbers, yes, but it's then doubling them. But I just want to show that. And there you go. You've got an answer of 42. Okay, so I'll just change that back to the way it was, A plus B, and so forth like that. Now, The other aspect of it too is that that will take in two methods, and it's only printing it out there. Now, I stated before that this keyword here called void, well, void is important. It's important in the notion that we have this method. It takes the two numbers, it puts them in, and then it prints out C. It adds them up and assigns the addition to C, and then it prints C. And we do see the value 42 being printed in the output. But the point is that we don't return that value back to the main program or wherever we're going to invoke it. It doesn't necessarily be from main, but obviously if you're a beginner programmer at this stage, you'll still be working within the confines of main. So this is the point here is that word there, void, states that this method is going to return nothing. Now, let's say that we want it to return a value to the actual program itself, back to main. In other words, to use it. So what you'd actually do there at this stage is that basically was public static int, add int A, int B. Now note here, it's only the data type of what you're returning. Now also too down here is it's saying missing return statement. If you were returning something, in other words, if you're doing either a calculation or modifying values within a function, that basically what's going to be returned must obviously be stated. Now in this case here, we have a variable called C. Okay, so what we're just going to do is return C. Now, in order to use that will return it and so forth like that. Okay, but in order to use it, we have obviously to assign that value to a variable at the point of invocation. Now, I'll go through, there is a x, y, z, and I'll just assign z is equal to 0. But what I'll do then, z is equal to add x plus y. Now I'm just actually going to do something here, is that inside method, I'm going to do two printouts here. And basically the purpose of these two printouts is to show that basically on line 7 we're after invoking the method, and what happens actually on line 6 is that the code jumps from line 6, and in this case it jumps down to line 11. It does everything within the method itself. It will print out the value, and then it will return C. So then C is returned, and C is assigned, no, not necessarily, but the value of C is assigned then to Z. Okay, so then what it means is that we can then use that value within main again. If we had left it at void, we would have printed out the value and so forth like that, and it would have seemed to have worked, and that's a problem that beginner programmers do face, that basically they have a printout in their method and they see the value, but then when they want to get the value back at within the main, what the problem is that they're not returning the value. Okay, in other words, they're not assigning it back to a variable. Okay, so in order to run this, and I'll just change the values here, 16 and 15, so we should see a value of 31 being printed out twice. Okay, and I'll explain why twice after a few seconds. Just need to build this and run this. Now, note here, okay, obviously I could have done a bit of spacing, but inside method 31 and after method is called 31. Now basically what is happening here, even though you might think, hang on, isn't after method is called on line 7 and inside method is called on line 13. Yes, you are right, but what methods allow you to do is to branch off, do a specific task, and then come back to the main program, and that is what has happened here. So on line 6 what we've done is branched off to line 11, done all what the method is needed to be done, and then returned it to C, and then on line 7 then we print out C's value, which is after being assigned to Z up here in line 6, and we print that out. Okay, so that's what's happening there. So that's why you can see that you've two different, after method is called an inside method, but they have the same value of the variable, but it's just basically that the value is being returned back to the main program. Okay, so basically that's kind of methods in a nutshell. But basically what we can do obviously is that what I'm going to do in the second video now is kind of look at that in more detail, but also too the places that people can mess up on in methods from a beginner programmer's aspect. So I'll cover that in the next video, which I'm just about to do now. Okay, so see you in a few minutes.